Hey, what's up, everybody? Greg Armstrong, the host of the Gospel and Race podcast. I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube page. I want you to find your favorite podcast platform because all of our episodes are there. Be a part of this community. Join us, spread the word. Let's continue with the conversations that are critical to race and the church. Gospel and Race podcast. All right, Gospel and Race podcast. What's up, y'all? Greg Armstrong, I'm back. I am grateful, man, for what God is doing amongst this podcast and the feedback we're getting. I want to remind y'all, we do this podcast because we are passionate about the intersection between the church, culture, and race. And we really believe the church needs to be at the forefront of this conversation of race, all the antagonisms that are happening in our culture. The church needs to be addressing these things. We're not hiding from these critical conversations about race, and I'm excited to have my boy here now. This is the first time we've had a New Yorker.
Let's go.
The New Yorker.
Let's go. Let's go.
This is legendary.
Let's break it in.
Yes. Let's go. This is legendary. This is the first time we've had all these Chicago folks. We haven't had some folks from other states, but those were virtual podcasts. But in the flesh, we have Pastor Tim Holmes. Welcome to Gospel and Race, brother.
Thank you,
Welcome.
man. Thank you, man. Honored to be here.
Yeah, Bronx, from the Bronx.
That's right.
Renovation City Church.
That's right.
A church planter. You're celebrating 1 year.
That's right. This Sunday.
Man, congrats on that,
Yeah.
man. That's huge,
Thank
man.
you.
So tell us a little bit about you. Just drop it on us.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in the Bronx. I am a father of 3 girls, girl dad.
Oh, man.
I have a 7-year-old, have a almost 5-year-old, almost 2-year-old. I've been married to my wife for 10 years this March.
Yeah.
And we live this beautiful, chaotic life in the Bronx. So both of us are born and raised in the Bronx. And God really brought us through this like journey where over time, as we got married, we felt this call from God to really care for the place that we call home in the Bronx. This might be true, similar in parts of Chicago, but like when you grow up in the Bronx, it's really taught to you that success is making it out. And so you'll see a lot of people like move up to Westchester or move to Pennsylvania or Jersey. And the goal is always like, if you're gonna make it out, you're gonna make it either right outside the Bronx or you go down to Florida or something like that. And that is success. And so we had kind of like that mentality loosely.
You did have that mentality.
Yeah, and not because we hated where we grew up, but that's just the normative. Like
That's what it is.
My wife was a teacher. I was in campus ministry and doing pretty well in our fields. And we just kind of had this thought of like, all right, we're like probably at some point we'll move up to Westchester.
Yeah.
And over the course of time, really, it started earlier, but really succinctly started in 2018. There was just a string of murders that happened in the Bronx.
Yep.
We were seeing a higher rate than normal. Over the first 26 weeks, we saw 52 people get murdered in the Bronx. Just in the Bronx, not in New York City, just in the Bronx alone. Some of them really close to home, like friend from middle school saying rest in peace. Or one time we were visiting my in-laws and right outside their apartment we heard gunshots. Waited for the block to cool down, and then we find out the next day that those shots were from a 15-year-old girl who got killed. And we felt the weight of that, and as we like were processing that and discerning that, there were a lot of things I think God was doing, but one of those things was increasing compassion for the place we call home.
Yeah.
And not seeing success as making it out, but seeing faithfulness, not necessarily success, but seeing faithfulness as loving the place that has birthed us. And so we felt a real strong call to stay rooted in the Bronx. Eventually, that led to a church plant.
Man, how did you come to faith? Like,
Yeah.
was this young for you?
So I wasn't raised a Christian. My family was kind of like non-religious. My mom grew up Catholic. My dad is from the South, so family was connected to like some of the holiness movements in the South, but my parents together weren't like, they weren't anti-religious, they just weren't religious.
Yeah.
So I didn't really grow up with a sense of who God was or who Jesus was. And when I was 12, a couple weeks before my 13th birthday, I was at the park playing basketball with two of my friends. They were attending a church in the neighborhood,
Really?
mostly for girls. Not because like for whatever,
Yeah.
but like mostly
That's a real
to
thing,
meet
bro.
girls. Yeah.
Come on,
And
man.
so they then invited me to a different park because the church was doing something. And I only went really because I didn't want to be by myself.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I heard the gospel. There was a Christian hip hop group that performed. They did a song. I heard a testimony, and then they made a call to faith. And I said to myself, I don't know who this God is, but if they're talking about this God's love as if it's real, and if it is real, I want that. And so
that's dope.
I made a decision to follow Jesus. I started going to church on my own. And really those first 3 years was about me figuring out what that meant to follow Jesus. And it was around 16 years old that I made this like, all right, God, you can have it all. Like,
Yeah.
I believe you. This is real. I want to give my life to
Did this influence your family at all? You know,
sort of. So my mom ended up coming to faith. My mom passed away in 2017, but before she died, she ended up recommitting her life to Jesus.
Amen.
And my sisters are still not following Jesus, but you know, they see things. We have conversations. There's been growth in at least accepting what I believe and engaging in faith conversations.
Yeah.
So it has influence. And outside of that, my family is really disconnected. So I don't have lots of connections to my mom's side or to my dad's side outside of that.
Yeah. Well, you also church planner. I want to throw something at you. This is what I believe. So I want you to beat this up.
Yeah.
All right. I believe that the multi-ethnic church is the only hope towards engaging racial injustice in the neighborhood. I'm not dismissing activism. I'm not dismissing law. I'm not dismissing government and all that. I believe that the multi-ethnic church, in its most authentic, truest form, not whitewashed, pure, is the means by which God can engage racial darkness and injustice in the neighborhood. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think that's true if we're talking about in its purest form and if the church is being the church.
Yeah.
I think in New York City, I can't speak for other places, but I think for New York City, being able to define terms is really important.
Right.
Because when people hear multi-ethnicity, I think in our town, what they hear is diversity. And in New York City, it's really easy to accomplish diversity. You get on any New York City train, any New York City bus, and you've accomplished diversity. You have people from so many nations, so many cultures who are in one space. The schools are integrated. So like you have blacks and Hispanics and whites going to school together, and that's normal. And so just simply accomplishing diversity, I think, is not actually what you're talking about.
Right.
I think what you're talking about is a group of diverse people learning to lean into neighbor love with each other and actually living out the tenets of the gospel with one another. And I think if that happens, I think you're right. I think that is the only hope, because there's no other reason for blacks to meddle and get that involved in the lives of our Hispanic and Latino brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
We don't have to care that much,
Right.
Unless we're actively involved in their lives.
Yeah.
There's no reason for immigrant Arabs or East Asians or Middle East Asians to come into a community and care about police violence against black lives, unless there's a reason why our lives are connected.
Right.
And I think the gospel does give us that reason. So when we're living out our real purpose as a church, I agree. I think that is the hope and the symbol of what unity and what peace and what justice is supposed to look like.
You know, that's good, man. We're defining multi-ethnic, I think, regionally across the country in different ways. So like in the Midwest here, there's been a history of multi-ethnic. It's been very white-centered, this white-centered acceptance of other cultures, right? Willie Jennings talks about sort of like this caricature of whiteness that becomes the baseline by which we all try to attain, right? We want to attain that level, whether it's economic, it's power, status. And so the multi-ethnic church in the Midwest, it's been like dominant white with the acceptance of, hey, we'll accept white people, black people, Hispanic people, Latino people, That's different for you on the East Coast. Yeah. I mean, because I imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, that you don't have to really fight to make the room multi-ethnic? Or what's the, I just feel like, tell me if I'm, that it's not necessarily centered on sort of the white narrative. So talk to that a little bit.
I think there's pieces of truth to that, but I think still, actually it's hard. So in a neighborhood, there's integration. So you'll have black folks, you'll have Hispanic folks, you'll have, depending on what neighborhood you're in, you'll have white folks that are like all together, go to school together, go to the same supermarket together. Still in New York City, though, churches are often racially distinguished. And so you'll have your primarily black church that will have, they won't say no to Latinos coming in, but just know that what you're getting is black culture, black experience.
That's what you get.
You're gonna do gospel music during worship. You're gonna have black styled preaching primarily, and the people who do well in those spaces are the people who learn to appreciate the primary culture. You have some churches in New York City that are leaning into multi-ethnicity in the way that you're describing it, that's not white-centered, but it's very far few and in between. And I think that's one of the things we've been trying to lean into in our church plant, where it is a black and Latino church. So when you go in, that's what you're gonna see. You're gonna see a bunch of black and brown skin. And you're gonna see people who, I think at face value, you think like, oh, like this is not really multi-ethnic. But it is, because we'll have African Americans and Black Caribbeans and Hispanic Caribbeans, and we'll have Central Americans and South Americans, like all together. And the way they understand their own ethnicity is all different. But rarely in the church scene are people learning to fully live into their ethnicity while they're Christian. And so usually there is some sort of sub-dominant culture, and people have to leave their other cultures at the door to enter in. So we're gonna, for example, we're gonna come into church and we're primarily gonna do CCM music.
Right.
So whatever your natural musical taste is, you leave that at the door, and you engage in this church culture. Assimilation, right. And it might not be led by a white person, but the culture is still dominated by kind of the white evangelical influence. We're still doing all the Pop 100 hits. We're still following whatever, no disrespect, but we're still following whatever Mav City and Bethel and Hillsong are doing. Whatever songs are popping, those are the ones that we do. And so even in our church plant, in song selection, we've tried to be intentional about making sure black voices and Hispanic voices are just a normal part of the rotation. Not because Black History Month starts on Sunday. Not because Hispanic Heritage Month is coming in a couple months, but just because this is who we are, that we worship, influenced and informed by the people that make up our church.
You said something, it's so, this white-black, multi-ethnic, dominant conversation, it really doesn't do justice, you know what I mean? Because even in a black culture, there are subcultures.
That's right.
Right? There are different iterations.
That's right.
We have the classic historical black church. I come from a Baptist background, so the missionary Baptist kind of black church. You then have the AME church. You then have these different styles of worship, the Pentecostal charismatic church, the Kojic church. Like we have lived black experience and culture, but the way in which we kind of see ecclesiology, it changes. And I imagine, if we're in New York with you, when you have like Caribbean, what I mean?
Yep.
African American and the Caribbean and this and Haitian. I'm sure you have to deal with multiple layers.
That's right.
Of cultural difference, even with the same skin tone.
Right. Actually, I just had a conversation a couple weeks ago. Someone who's been coming to our church recently gave her life to Jesus this past month, and I'm talking through with her. She comes from a more Black Baptist background, and she was telling me how dissonant sometimes church is for her, because she doesn't feel like everyone is as expressive as she's used to from her Black Baptist background. And that was one of the conversations that I tried to walk her through. It's like, well, worship sometimes is dictated for us based off of who's leading. And so you'll have our more expressive worship leaders that are on rotation that come from a more expressive background.
Right.
And then you'll have our worship leaders that come from a different background. So they're inviting us to lean in. And what I told her is, I know we're not fully there yet, but I hope we're cultivating the type of culture where the extroverted, expressive Black Baptist or Kojic or AME, like name your expressive tradition, that they feel like they can bring their full selves, even if someone who is coming in from a more conservative church background and engages in worship more reflective is right next to them. Yeah. That both of them don't feel the pressure to mimic each other, but that they actually feel blessed by the differences. Yeah. And you have to, but what that means for this person is you have to bear with the varying degrees of expression. Right. Because we're trying to create room for all of it and not name that there's a monolith in the Black tradition or a monolith in the Hispanic tradition. Actually, there exists across the board. We have people who come from Hispanic Catholic backgrounds. Yeah, right. And they're going to worship different. We have two liturgies that we do as a church. When they do liturgy, that's like their jam. Like they're going to fully lean in, but the worship might feel a little too charismatic for them. But for our Pentecostal brothers and sisters, like they're going to feel a little weird by the liturgy that we do. Right. And then they're going to lean in when we're doing worship or when we're doing intercessory prayer. And actually, we're trying to create a space where everyone feels welcomed and everyone knows that their experience, their background is normal. It's okay.
Dude, I tried to introduce some liturgy to our church. And we're more like Black church expressive. Yeah. And it was so bad, bro. It was so bad. Like, we didn't know what to do, like call and response. And we tried to introduce it, blah, blah, blah. And then we just all started laughing. Because we were like, we're going to try this again next time. And it shows just kind of, what you are not used to.
That's right.
Certain liturgical expressions. I love that you guys are diversifying that. Yeah. Because I think that's how we're going to sustain true multi-ethnic church. My question for you is, this is something that we've been focusing on, we looked at our worship expression, realized that 80% of it was a white normative expression that we've all kind of like bought into, the songs, the style, the whole 9 yards. And we realized that it just wasn't true to who we really are. Here's my question, because I want to make sure people understand when we talk about this term whiteness, right? Whiteness as it's an ideological frame. Yep. It's not a we're not accusing anybody. We're not talking down on white people. But whiteness as an ideological frame. My question for like a Black-led multi-ethnic church, how do you fight against this whiteness norm that always it always tries to rear its head into the success of an organization, a church? Do you have to fight that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, so an example of that, I think, is in worship. And it's hard as a church plant because we're also outsourcing some of our worship, right? We don't have everything in-house.
Yeah, okay, right.
And so it's harder to negotiate with someone when I'm not also discipling them. They have a different pastor. It's not my job to pastor them. And I recognize the difference in relationship. And so I kind of walk those lines a little differently than when I'm working with some of our in-house people. And for our in-house people, the question I am asking is always like, so if I see that, all right, we're kind of selecting songs or leaning towards songs that are more like centered around white CCM culture. There's nothing wrong with those songs. And is there another song that, if we're talking about holiness, do we have to sing that song? Or is there a holiness song that will get the same theme, same point, but is led and written and performed by a black person or by a Hispanic person? Is there a Spanish song that does the same thing, but maybe not centering the same voice or the same thought or opinion? So I think that's one way we think about it. The other way, we're not there yet because we just don't have the personnel. But every worship leader that I talk to, I walk through my priorities of how I want us to pick songs. Yeah. The first priority is that you would pick a song that you feel comfortable entering into worship from. Yeah. That if we're trying to cultivate a worship experience, I don't want you, if you're not comfortable with a song and you're gonna fumble over lyrics and you're gonna look uncomfortable as you're leading a different style, like, great, we can work towards that. We don't have to do that this Sunday. So the main priority is always like, let's pick songs that you can enter into the presence of God with. Yeah. Because people are not going to go further than you are. They're watching you. Right. And so your entrance into worship is going to give a cue for everyone else. So that's one. The second is around the the theological kind of frames and the words that are being used. So let's stay away from things that don't align with our theology. Even if it's a great song and it feels good, but if it don't align with our theology, we're either going to edit the lyrics or we're going to pick a different song altogether. Yeah. Or if the people that it comes from, like we have real theological issues with them. Yeah. We live in 2026 where we have a litany of musical choices. We don't have to pick that song. Yeah. There's no song, there's no worship leader that has a monopoly on songs. Right. So we just don't have to force ourselves there. So that's the second way we think about it. Then the third way we think about it is culture and style. And so that's where we're like, all right, are there black styled songs, got more gospel oriented songs? Are there Spanish speaking songs that maybe we can lean into? Are there bilingual songs that we can lean into? Or is this same song performed differently by a black person that maybe we can then use as our inspiration, right? Because even if a song is good, from my perspective, the person who primarily wrote the song or first wrote the song, they don't have a monopoly on that song either. And so if there's someone who puts a more gospel flair on it or a more Latin flair on it that can give us inspiration about how to lead this song to our people better, let's lean into them rather than leaning into the original just because it's the original. And so we try to be really intentional. It's not a perfect process, but I think at least thinking through those layers has helped us to hold what we value and make really wise decisions about it. Yeah.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. That's very important to me as well. My number one is theological. Mm-hmm. My number two is where did it come from. Yeah. And we're singing these songs that come from these songwriting camps and churches that are affiliated with oppressive motives, oppressive political motives. Right. We know who they all are. We don't have to call them all out. Yeah. But I told our team, we don't do those.
We're just not doing those songs.
We're not doing those. I don't see. And I think that's a part of being a witness. And being aware. Yeah. Right. Being aware. And I'm thinking to myself, as a songwriter, I'm thinking to myself, we are putting royalty dollars in the pockets of the very people that are pushing forward oppressive motives, laws, and they're very blatant about it. And we're just like, we're gonna sing these songs. Oh, I love this song, but I don't care. You write a song. I don't care if the song sounds like Jingle Bells. I'd rather write a song that fits the theology of our culture rather than taking the top 40 that are controlled by the big four, right? In terms of church and songwriting camps and collectives. And I found it so difficult, sitting here listening to a song, and one of them is everybody's favorite song in the world right now. And I'm just like, I know who wrote this song.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and I just can't worship to that, bro.
Yep.
But I think for us as leaders, I think it's important to educate people on that.
That's right.
I think our worship teams need to know.
That's right.
Like, there's some implications to this, to singing this. Like, there's some financial implications to this. There's some theological implications. And the person that wrote the song and me, we don't believe the same God, you know?
Right. And
so,
they wouldn't affirm what we're doing here.
There you
Right?
go.
So it's different from just like, this is not just like a theological preference or persuasion. Like, I think we can learn how to be kingdom-minded with people who think differently than us. But some of the people that you're thinking about, they would not affirm the work we're doing.
Huh. Yeah.
They don't get behind. Like recently, we had someone talk to a friend of theirs about their church, about our church that they were inviting, and they were like, "Oh, I go to this justice-oriented church," and the person immediately knew that it was us. Small little church in the Bronx that's only 1 year old. That phrase ring like, oh yeah, I've heard about this, which tells you the nature of like how many churches are really integrating justice ideas with the gospel. But some of the people you're naming, if they hear that phrase connected to our church, they would not get behind us. And if that's true, then we don't need to support them.
Right.
It's not like there's only 5 songs and we have to just pick through these songs and deal with it. We have a countless amount of songs to pick from. We can go back to the 90s. We can go back to the 80s.
Yeah.
We can bring up some Ron Canoli and like revitalize songs that are older.
Gary, let's go, man. Seriously.
And we don't have to do it. Like we just don't have to do it. And because our hand is not forced to pick this song, if we know that they don't get behind us, we don't have to do the same.
We're not speaking the same language.
Right.
And we're not engaging God in the same way.
Right.
And you see him differently than I see him. And like you said, we don't have to agree on that. Yeah. But I'm not going to affirm the words that you put to pen and paper.
That's right.
From a place of oppression that, quite honestly, I'm unfamiliar with.
That's
like,
right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like we don't have to do that. And I think these are conversations in multi-ethnic churches that are very, very like absolutely prevalent.
Yeah.
Because you've seen that sort of whiteness frame infiltrate every type of church. Whether it's a black church, but I think we all need to be talking about this.
Yeah.
Like, you can't sing that song.
That's
the
right.
person that wrote it will not agree with what you don't even agree with you being black.
That's right. That's right.
But they're getting paid though.
That's right.
And so anyways, I don't want to get on my high horse.
And that's a part of our discipleship for like as pastors. That's how we disciple our people, because when they leave church on Sunday, whether we like it or not, or want them to or not, they're gonna go and listen to those songs.
Right.
If a song moved them on Sunday, the amount of times that someone came to us and said, "Oh, what was that song that we did?" They've never done it before that Sunday, but it moved them. They felt God move in that space. Now it's added to their playlist.
Yeah.
And the noise, the things that they receive, the things that they get input from, is as much a part of their discipleship as what we preach on Sunday.
Yes.
And as much as I can lead, I want to make sure that our people are being discipled well. Yeah. And so that doesn't just include listening to me, but that includes the names that we platform through our worship songs. That includes the people that I quote in my sermons.
Right.
That includes even the style of preaching. I had a friend ask me about like how to navigate like justice kind of oriented conversations in sermon and preaching. And one of the questions I asked him, I said, "Well, what preachers are you listening to?"
Yeah. Because
the black church has never had a problem with that.
Yeah.
Maybe what is hard for you is that you're listening to preachers who all they do is exegetically define something and then point to a potential application, but they've never done any cultural commentary. Right. And if that's the only thing that's informing you, influencing you, that shapes the way you preach.
Yeah.
And maybe you just need to listen to more black preachers because they've never had a problem with that.
Right.
it's never been an issue. But I think I say that to say even in the preaching or in the style of how we lay out our service, the things that we get influence from, it bleeds into how our people are discipled.
Yes.
Because we eventually explain that. Or they're like, oh, wow, every time Pastor Tim talks, he's talking about Willie Jennings. Like I've heard him mention him multiple times, or I wonder who that is. That becomes a part of their thing. Or if I'm referencing a book, or if I'm referencing a rap artist, or if I'm referencing another preacher or a pastor that I heard, or I heard this podcast, on that platform, that is a place of influence.
Yes.
And people are listening to our words, and they're making decisions about the things that they're going to allow to be a part of their boardroom of voices.
Yeah.
And we have to take that seriously.
So with that, like, what have you learned this last year as a church planter in the Bronx?
Yeah.
In a lot of cultural nuance there.
Here's one of the things that I learned. So we're still a small church, and still figuring out how to build momentum in terms of like growth. And I think there's lots of things I could talk about in that. The thing I'm most proud of about our church is the culture that we've built. In our church, justice is a part of the gospel. It's not a statement. It's not like a theological position. It's really lived.
Yeah.
60% of our church volunteered for a Christmas outreach that we did, where we served 350 people in our neighborhood. We overturned a community center and turned it into a thrift shop. Pantry food items, clothes, books, toys. And we're a church of 50 that served 350 people. And people told me in a debrief meeting, they've been a part of bigger churches that have not served this many people. Mm-hmm. And they served not dragging their feet, not like, oh, what time is it? I gotta go. They served in the same way that you see people light up during musical worship.
Yeah.
This was their element, because we're living out the things that we believe God has called us to live out. Doing that work, building that culture, is really hard. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of repetition. And I think some of the things that I have heard from people who have planted before me is sometimes the focus is too much on sustainability and growth. And none of those things are bad. But what I've heard over and over again from actual pastors is 7 years in, 10 years in, they'll say, man, Tim, I wish we focused a little bit more on prayer. I wish we focused a little bit more on loving our neighbors or on evangelism, because now it's really hard to get people to do these things that we all believe as pastors are really important. But if it's not a part of the initial DNA of the church, it's going to be hard to get it in later, because culture is what gets repeated. Yeah. And so if this is what's being repeated now as a church of 50, when we get to become a church of 80 or a church of 100, the new people coming in, this is what they see. Yes. That this is what this community is about. And this is what it means to follow Jesus. And so I'm really proud of that. And it took a lot of work to do that. It's not about, for us, it hasn't been about like, this sermon series is going to kill it. Yeah. But no, like every week or every other week, it's integrated in our messages, because we can't separate that from the gospel proclamation that we see in Scripture. Yeah. And so they just hear it all the time. Or there's multiple opportunities to serve people. We're not just waiting until Christmas to do that outreach. There are a number of things that we have done that have led up to that. We've had multiple places to practice loving our neighbor. In small ways, like caring for Miss Patty, a woman who's in a wheelchair who is homeless and always asking for money outside the church. We've helped people learn how to do the small things like that. We've helped people learn how to love their neighbors in wherever they live, in their workplaces. And then so when we do a big thing, it's like, oh, this is what we've been doing, just bigger and more concentrated. But that work of like figuring out what's the way that your church understands the gospel, and how does that get lived out in a regular way, and embedding that in the culture, so that from the very start, people know this is not just what we're about, but this is what Jesus is about. That's been one of the biggest lessons this year. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, that's really dope. And that's
Yeah.
good work, man. I mean, you're right. Starting your church off with that appetite of justice and neighbor and presence and incarnation. I mean, that's what will sustain the church.
Yeah.
And you're right, man. I mean, you build whatever you build your church on, you got to sustain it on that.
Yep.
I'm telling you, man, we built our churches on the circus, man, and you got to sustain the circus. Right. You realize 10 years later, we've served nobody, and we're just here. I always use this term, like multi-ethnic church, as a disruption, a disruption to the cultural issues that we face. Yeah. And it sounds like you guys kind of believe in the same space through your outreach and justice initiatives, et cetera. But we need a disruption.
Yeah.
Like we need, the world's wild.
Yep.
It's wild right now. And it's wild in Minnesota right now. It was wild in Chicago. It was wild on the East Coast.
Yep.
With ICE and immigration and all these issues, this authoritarianism, government being a force, a power over. We need a real disruption. Yeah. And Fitch wrote on power, godly power versus, worldly power, and you can't exercise a godly power initiative through worldly power.
Yeah.
So I do see the church as disruptive force.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? And do you think the multi-ethnic church can be a disruptor?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think what the multi-ethnic church gets to disrupt is what society has deemed as normal. So for our church, they're used to political things being leading to division and arguments, leading to fights, leading to insensitive, inhumane, apathetic comments. That's what we see in our government. That's what we see on social media with social media influencers. That's what we see in the news. That's what, unfortunately, some people have seen in church.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That is, when you talk about like all of what the multi-ethnic church can accomplish, that is not the vision of multi-ethnicity that God has given us in Scripture. Actually, what we see in Scripture is differences not leading to division, but leading to deeper community.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you don't confront things, but there's a way you confront things that doesn't take away someone's dignity and humanity.
Right.
So I think there is a normal that is against what God has intended for the world.
Yeah.
And that is the way of the empire. That's the way of power. That's the way of violence. That's the way of revenge. And we see that normalized over and over again. I think what the church gets to do, what the multi-ethnic church gets to do, is create a different normal for people. When Donald Trump recently got elected, there was we had a chat about it in our church chat, and there are people who had different opinions. And when things were getting a little spicy, those were the only times that I came in and said, "Hey, here's the ground rules. Here's how we're going to talk to each other. If you disagree, here's the way we're going to disagree. If you feel like this chat is not good enough, call each other." Mm-hmm. And we're teaching people how to humanize each other in differences. And I've had multiple people tell me that they've never seen a church engage in conversation as contentious as what we do with humanity and dignity and empathy for one another. And so even when I'm naming something in a sermon, it isn't to defile someone. It's to bring clarity. Yeah. It isn't to dehumanize someone. Yeah. But it is actually to name a difference while still recognizing that person that I may disagree with and I may be calling out is also made in the image of God. Yeah. And I think the temptation for the multi-ethnic church, especially multi-ethnic churches that are predominantly people of color, is to fight inhumane with inhumane. And that's just not what the gospel has called us to. Mm-hmm. And I think when we learn how to engage in differences, listen to each other's perspectives, and even as a brother or sister, disagree. Like, I disagree with what you're saying, but I'm disagreeing in a way that I'm still remembering that you are a brother and sister and you are made in the image of God, even if that is not reciprocated.
Yes.
And when we're able to do that, I think it disrupts because it creates a new normal. That we've seen that over and over again, where people have told me at least once a month, I get some sort of comment where someone tells me and says, Pastor Tim, I've never experienced anything like this before. I've never experienced a pastor do this. I've never experienced a pastor care in this way. I've never experienced a pastor call this out and point it to scripture, not just their opinion.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing, is we're creating a new normal for them so that they can recognize actually what you've experienced before is a distortion.
Right.
That's actually the disruption. And that I think that's the countercultural piece, is what is normal is a disruption, because that's not how it was supposed to be.
What is normal to culture for us is chaos.
Right.
Power.
Right.
Disruption.
Right.
Confusion, right? Like dissension.
Right.
And what you're saying is the multi-ethnic church then normalizes. Like it disrupts in a way that brings kingdom.
That's right.
As a normal posture,
right.
which is antithetical to culture,
Yes.
which is, humility and meekness.
Yep.
Godly power versus worldly power.
That's right.
Engaging the neighborhood with humility, when in fact we want to be antagonistic sometimes.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
right.
Because you want to.
We want our lick back.
Yeah, we want our lick back, man. You throwing blows, I want to throw
That's
blows
right.
back.
That's right.
But, I think this is where like gospel centricity comes in. Like, gospel being central to us as a multi-ethnic church, it calls us to a different way.
Yeah.
It calls us to a different way. And I do, though, want people to understand the difference between, maybe you can speak to this, Tim, the difference between humility and meekness as the church and having a voice.
Yeah.
Having a voice of accountability towards injustice, right? Yeah. I think sometimes we think it's either or.
Yeah.
Like you can be strong and you can be adamant about justice related items with humility.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I think with that you have to take the whole canon of scripture in play. And so yes, humility is important, and it's important not to strong arm people, and it's important not to be boastful in how you talk. But when Paul called out Peter for not embracing the Gentiles,
Yep.
was that not meek?
Right.
When Jesus called out the religious leaders, was that not meek? Was he being something other than what he's called us to do? When the prophets are calling the people of Israel over and over again back to the way of Jesus, because they've given in to the empire and to Babylon, and they're not caring for the widows and the orphans anymore, and they're holding up all these idols, and they're not engaging in purity and justice anymore.
Yeah.
Are the prophets not being meek? Like,
Right.
are we then saying that in the many moments of scripture where people have called and confronted something that is wrong, are we saying all of those are examples of non-meekness? Or is there a way to confront and to call out injustice while still holding the character of humility? Recognizing that, like, I'm not saying this because I am superior to you. And I think that's the difference. Humility is about having a rightness in your view of relationship.
Yeah.
And so if I'm calling someone out, the humble and meek posture is to do it from a place of love.
Yeah.
Like, I love you too much to allow you to continue to say this.
Yeah. I love you too much. I love us too much
Right.
to
Right.
continue to allow this to be a
Right.
reality.
Right. And that were the prophets, right? I love Israel so much. I love the church so much.
Yeah.
That what we're doing is displeasing to the heart of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think actually that's a problem in this conversation, is that we, the American church as a whole, we don't love the church enough to call it out. And we don't want confrontation, because we have been told that confrontation is a sign that I think, not only do I think you're wrong, but I think you're bad and evil, and I think you're unlovable. But that's what our government leaders do when they confront things.
Right.
That's what the White House does when they confront things, is they belittle people to submission. That's not the way of the people of God. We don't have to belittle people to submission to God. But we do need to love them enough to tell them they're wrong.
I wonder, to your point about the church, not loving the church enough. I wonder if it's because we don't see the church as a communal embodied presence together, right? Like we see the church as individualistic, consumeristic, right? So
the church is me.
I'll get out of it what I want.
Yeah.
I'll get out of the church what I want, what I need.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't see any accountability.
Right.
Within the church, like I'm not going to be accountable to you,
right?
But if we are a communal body, embodied presence, and right now our church is going through this, then what you do does matter,
right?
Like I got to call out white nationalism,
right?
I got to call out like supremacy, I got to call out these things that we call ourselves common,
right? As
the church, but no, you're not representing who Scripture says we are.
That's right. Yeah, one of our pastors, she says we have to remember that if someone in the church is doing something wrong, like if you're doing something wrong, I don't go to your church, you're a pastor from a different state, but we are still the church.
Right.
And so what you do is connected to me.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that. And that's a part of the lack of compassion. It's like, oh, well, if someone's wilding out, that's them over there. And they need to figure it out. But not recognizing that actually impacts the witness of the church because we are one. And I think the problem is a lot of us want to feel a sense of belonging in the church. But to belong in the church means that you belong to the church. Yeah. Like belonging is not just what you get out of it. But it means there's an interconnectedness. Yeah. And I think we want what we can get out of it without recognizing the interconnectedness of belonging. That's good. I belong to my wife, which means I can't just do whatever I want.
That's right.
Because what I do is connected to her. I belong to my family. Yeah. So if I say something that minimizes or belittles my children, I belong to them. So what I do represents them. Yeah. And I think we forget that in this conversation.
Man, this is good, man. I could talk to you all day, bro. I'll be honest, man. But I do want to point out the fact that, my Bronx brother came in with the weeded Timbs. I mean, he's stomping on us today. Go front.
Represent.
He's stomping on us today. Hey, man,
you can bring the boy out of the Bronx, but you can't bring the Bronx out of the boy.
You can't do it, man. You staying true to yourself, man. Thanks for coming to Chicago, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting
Appreciate
me.
This conversation, man. Keep doing. We're praying for the church.
Amen.
And the work that you're doing. We'll follow up. We'll have to have you back so we can get an update on what God's doing at Renovation City, all right?
Yeah, we'd love that.
Yo, Gospel and Race. Y'all give it up for my boy Tim. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.